Welcome to the chapter 8, Transport and Communication. I think it cannot get any more simpler to understand as to what we will be covering in this chapter. Transport and communication is a plain and simple meaning of the words trade and exchange of commodities and information. And the basic objective behind these services is to establish some sort of a link between producing centers, that is factories and industries, and consuming centers like a marketplace. Because you will rarely see any production center near to your place. Some may live near an industrial area, but majority of these production centers are far away. And to bring the commodities from industries to the actual marketplace, it's the job of the Transport and Communication Department. Today, every nation wants to move fast towards development, and any sort of development largely relies on trade. And we have just read how trade hugely depends on the transport and communication. So you see the importance and relevance of this service. The first topic that we will read is about transport. The meaning of transport is any movement of person or goods from one place to another through a medium, and that medium can range from vehicles to humans to animals. Remember bullock carts? That's an example of animal being a medium of transport. And these movements take place over land, water and air. And nowadays there is pipelines that carry materials like petroleum, natural gas and ores in liquefied form. So you see, it's a basic need of a society, and where there is a necessity, there is an opportunity of development. That's why nations invest heavily behind transportation services. Now let's talk about the modes of transportation. So as we know, there are four modes of transportation, that is land, water, air and pipelines. And the importance of each and every mode is directly dependent on what kind of good or service you want to deliver. For example, if you want to do international movement, then it is only possible through ocean and air. Similarly, road transport is cheaper and faster over short distances and for door-to-door services. Then we have railways that move bulk materials over long distances. Airways are good to move perishable and high-value items. So remember, mode of transportation totally depends on the importance and value of a product that needs to be delivered. Now let's read about each and every mode of transport in detail. The first one is land transport. So let's quickly go through a timeline that shows the transition of how goods and services were carried from one place to another. In early days, humans themselves were carriers. Our ancestors have been around for about 6 million years, but the modern form of humans only evolved about 200,000 years ago. Civilization as we know it is only about 6,000 years old. By civilization, we mean the development of a society, so that happened only 6,000 years ago. So yeah, humans were the carriers of anything that needed to be moved from one place to another. Then came animals like mules, horses and camels that carried cargo. After the invention of wheel around 3500 BC, carts and wagons came into play. Then in the 18th century, steam engine was invented. This moment of time is also referred to as the Industrial Revolution that totally revolutionized today's industrial settings. After that, in 19th century, it was the invention of the internal combustion engine that revolutionized road transport in terms of motor cars and trucks. And today we have pipelines to transport liquids like mineral oil, water, sludge and sewers. So I hope you understood this timeline and how development took place in terms of land transportation. Now we go to the next topic, roads. As we all know, road transport is very economical for short distances, meaning it gives good value for money mainly because of its door-to-door services, which is gaining a lot of popularity. But this transportation is totally dependent on good metal roads. And because of heavy rain and floods, roads get handicapped, which severely affects road transportation. That's why you must have heard vegetables aren't available in the market due to bad weather. And a lot of times it is because bad roads which stops the trucks that transport vegetables. I hope you're understanding the limitation of road transport. But in the similar situation, railways are a good option because rail tracks have high embankment and that is an effective solution. But railways cannot deliver goods for shorter distances. It is only meant for longer distances. So you see, both rail and roadways have their own set of limitations and advantages. Now it is a known fact that there is a difference between the quality of roads in developed and developing countries. And the simple reason is their public expenditure. So developed countries invest huge in construction and maintenance of public roads when compared to developing countries. Road transportation face another major problem, and that is traffic. We all have witnessed that in our respective cities. We often call it as peak hours. Usually this time the traffic is high due to work timings. And the next topic we are going to read about is highways. Highways are metal roads connecting distant places. The purpose of highways is not to cause any traffic obstruction. That's why they are 80 meters wide, consisting of multiple lanes, then bridges, flyovers, etc. In North America, every place is within 20-kilometer distance from a highway. They have something called Pan American Highway that connects South America to Central America and then USA to Canada. In Europe, you will see highways face a lot of competition from railways and waterways. So if you look at the map of Europe, they have a lot of inland waterways. There's a lot of small canals in between the European countries. And due to high-speed railways here in Europe has gained a lot of popularity. If you can travel faster at a lower fare, why wouldn't you opt for that transport medium? Now when we go to Russia, here the highways are well developed, especially in the industrial regions of west of Urals. Ural mountains are here, basically forming a border for Europe and Russia. And since Moscow, the capital, is closer to this place, this becomes the hub of industrial region. Moscow to Vladivostok highway is one of the important highways in Russia. Again, due to such a big geographical area that Russia occupies, railways is an important mode of transportation. Now we are going to China. Highways are an important aspect for the Chinese people. All major cities are connected through highways. Now coming to India, highways are very important. Almost all the cities are now linked through roadways. We have the longest highway, that is NH7, that connects Varanasi to Kanyakumari. Then we have the Golden Quadrilateral, which is of a quadrilateral shape, connecting New Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai, Kolkata and Hyderabad. Now let's talk about border roads. Roads that are found along the international borders are called border roads. These roads are basically meant for integration purpose. They are used to transport goods to border villages and military camps. In India, we have the Border Roads Organization that takes care of the construction and maintenance of the Indian border roads. Now we move on to the next topic, railways. Always remember, railways are meant for transporting bulky goods and passengers over long distances. Indian railways have 4 gauges. They are broad gauge, that is more than 1.5 meter. Then we have standard gauge, which is 1.44 meter. Then meter gauge, which is of 1 meter. And then we have smaller gauges. Gauges are basically the spacing of the rails on a railway track. Trains are very popular in these countries. Just have a look at them. Now let's understand the situation of railways in major continents and countries. So Europe has the most dense rail networks in the world. Some of those cities are London, Paris, Brussels, Milan, Berlin and Warsaw. So passenger transport is very important than freight in many of these countries. Then they have underground railways, which are important in London and Paris. Then they have Channel Tunnel, operated by Eurotunnel Group through England, connects London with Paris. Then we see in Russia, Russia depends on railways for a lot of their transportation need. They have very dense network near the west of the Urals. There are underground railways in Moscow, which is for passenger commuting. Now we go to North America. This place has the longest rail networks. It is such a massive continent and they have railways connecting all the way from north to the south till South America. So the Europeans use railways mostly for passenger commuting, but in North America, railways are more used for long distance bulky freight carrying like ores, cranes, timber and machinery. And in Australia, they have something called National Railway Lines that runs from west to east, that is from Perth to Sydney. In South America, railways are popular in Argentina and Brazil. Rest other countries have single track rail lines mainly used for transporting goods from ports to interior land. Now coming to Asia. In Asia, rail network is most dense in areas of Japan, China and India. If you see, these 3 countries together make 1/3 of the world population, so naturally railways would gain popularity. So now we go to the African continent, which is also the second largest continent. Now here the situation is a bit different. You see, because of lack of development, railways has not gained enough popularity. Now railway does exist, but it is primarily for transportation of gold, diamond and copper mining activities. Since African continent is so much rich in natural resources, hence the railways are mostly associated with transportation of these extraction. So you can read here all the places that the railways connect in African continent. So yeah, that's how the situation is about railways in Africa. Now we're going to talk about transcontinental railways. So the meaning of the word transcontinental is moving across a continent. It can be both in terms of length and width. So it is a railway that runs across the continent and links its two ends. That is called a transcontinental railways. So under this we have Trans-Siberian Railway, then we have Trans-Canadian Railway, and then we have the Union and Pacific Railway, then the Australian Transcontinental Railway, and the Orient Express. So all of these topics I have covered in each single short videos. I'll paste the link in the description as well as an annotation on the screen. Because I don't want to make this video too long, that's why I made a separate video on this. So head over there and watch them. Now we move on to the next mode of transport, water transport. So one of the great advantages of water transportation is that it does not require any road construction. So if you see, all the oceans of the world are connected with each other. And you will also notice that water in between continents and countries are connected through channels and canals. Hence, due to this natural connection, there is no need for any route construction. So all that is needed is we need a port facility so that the ships can go and park. Another important aspect about the water transportation is that it's way more efficient than land transportation. On land, a vehicle has to bear a lot of friction, and that means there will be high fuel consumption, and that would certainly lead to air pollution. Cost of transportation would increase as well. Now coming to water transportation, here the ship moves in a much effortless manner and energy consumption isn't that high as well. So this is what we mean when we say water transportation is way more efficient than land transportation. Now we'll read about ocean routes. Oceans are like a highway that makes a ship go in any direction. But today we have reached a stage of modernization where we have routeways that navigates the ships in reaching their destination. When compared to land and air, ocean transportation is cheaper one. And you must be familiar with these cargo ships that carry huge containers over long distances from one continent to another. And today's ships are equipped with radar, wireless and other navigational technologies which has made water transportation easy. And from economic perspective, with the development of refrigerated chambers for perishable goods, cargo ships are now a major source of revenue for any nation in terms of import and export services. We now move on to the next topic, important ocean routes. Now this topic needs a nice understanding with the help of a map. So I'll make a short videos on each of these ocean routes and make the links available in the description as well as on the screen. What you can do is pause, go to the respective link and watch. This way, you can also refer these short videos even if you don't want to watch this complete chapter. We now move on to the next topic, inland waterways. So whenever we are talking about inland waterway, we are talking about rivers, canals, lakes and coastal areas. Because the meaning of the word inland is getting inside the land. So to get inside the land and still be on water, it is only possible through rivers, canals and lakes. Now in an inland waterway, boats and steamers are used as a means of transport for cargo and passengers. Now for an inland waterway to be functional, it totally depends on the width and depth of the channel. Because of the inland waterway not being wide enough, the smallest ship cannot get inside, and if it is shallow, then it is not going to hold up the weight of the ship. Now the type of raw materials that can be transported through an inland waterway are coal, cement, timber and metallic ores. So this is purely for domestic transportation. It is not for the international export-import. So if we see, in the ancient time, riverways were the main highways of transportation. But then it lost its importance because of the competition from railways. Because as we know, railways are the perfect domestic transportation system. So this was all about the inland waterways. Now there are some world's important waterways which are like the highways of commerce. Again, to understand these waterways we need a map, so I'm going to make separate short videos on these each and every waterways that are important. This way you can pause, go to the respective link and watch, and you can also refer these short videos even if you don't want to watch this complete chapter. We now move on to the next topic, air transport. It is the fastest means of transportation, there's no doubt about that, but it is also very costly. And usually this type of transportation is preferred by passengers for long distance travel. Because you'll have limited time, you don't want to spend most of your time in transportation. And air transport is also used to reach inaccessible areas. You must have seen how flood affected areas receive all sorts of help from the government through air transportation. Air transport is also a perfect mode of transportation to overcome any geographical barriers. And then there are many inhospitable places in the world which can only be accessed through an air transportation. Some of those places are like northern Canada, which is totally covered with ice and huge mountains, and then we have Himalayan region in India. And speaking from a military perspective, airways are also very important from strategic importance. Airstrikes are very important from military perspective to neutralize the enemy forces. So that's an example of how airways are expanding. But when we talk about the maintenance part of air transportation, that is where the expenses go up. I'm talking about manufacturing of aircraft and their operations, and then infrastructures like hangars, landing, fueling, and maintenance of facilities of the aircraft. So all these expenses are very highly expensive, and that's why you've seen most of the airports are located at a developed city or a developed location, because that is where the profit would exist, and those profit will be used to actually pump in for these kind of maintenance. Now this is a very famous quote. At present, no place in the world is more than 35 hours away. Meaning you can take any plane and go to any place on earth within 35 hours. But then it involves a lot of smart planning and good timetable coordination of different airports. And if we are talking about the modern development aspect of air transportation, now we can see commercial jet transport, which are usually opted by rich people because for them time is equal to money and they wouldn't like to waste much of their time. And then we have more than 250 commercial airliners that offer regular services to different parts of the world. So all these kind of developments have caused a massive change in the air transportation. And then there are supersonic aircraft, meaning the aircraft travels at the speed of sound. And let me tell you, there is one supersonic aircraft which is used as commercial transportation, and that covers the distance between London and New York, meaning it has to go all over the Atlantic Ocean, and it does that within 3.5 hours. Now isn't that cool and super fast? Now we're going to talk about intercontinental air routes. So the meaning of the word intercontinental is from one continent to another. So if we see in the northern hemisphere, there is intercontinental air routes. We are talking about the regions of Eastern USA, then we have Western Europe, and then Southeast Asia. Now the cities that we are referring to here are New York, London, Paris, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Moscow, Karachi, New Delhi, Mumbai, Bangkok, Singapore, Tokyo, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Chicago. So these are like the nodal points, meaning a pit stop sort of a place where the plane comes and then radiates to all continents. And these places are also the major international airports of the world. And if we see the regions of Africa and then Russia and South America, here the air services are less. And the reason is simple: less population, limited landmass, and economic development. Since we know that air transportation is an expensive transportation, therefore the reason behind them is population, then landmass, that is the geographical landmass, and then the economic development of that place. So these three things are major point behind development of any sort of air transportation. The fourth mode of transport is pipelines. They're basically used to transport liquids and gases such as water, petroleum, and natural gas in an uninterrupted flow. So there is not going to be any interruption in terms of the transportation of these natural resources or gases, but however we can control it by creating a valve. So pipelines can be manually controlled, not naturally. Now in many parts of the world, cooking gas or LPG is supplied through pipelines, and in some part of the world pipelines are also used to transport liquefied coal and then milk. Especially in New Zealand, milk is being supplied through pipelines from farms to factories. And in the United States, there is a dense network of oil pipelines. And then in Europe, Russia, West Asia, and India, pipelines are used to connect oil wells to refineries. So there's this famous pipeline known as Tapi pipeline, in which the stakeholders are countries like Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. So this pipeline is used to transport natural gas to these four countries. So this is like a very important and famous project. I'm going to make a separate video on that. So in that I'm going to cover about the nitty-gritty detail of the pipeline and also in general why pipelines are helpful from economic perspective. I'm going to post the link when I'm done with the video. And the next topic of this chapter is communications. There were two important revolutions in communications. One was the arrival of telegraph and the other was telephone. The telegraph was instrumental in the colonization of American West. And today if you see, the AT&T, which stands for American Telegraph and Telephone Company, they enjoy a monopoly over US's telephone industry. So the point over here is that telephone became a critical factor in the urbanization of America today. because all the major firms had their headquarters in the city, and then they had small branches in smaller towns. To connect from the small branches to the headquarters, it was due to the help of telephone, it was all possible. But today things have got even more developed. Today we use cell phones with the help of satellites, and there is something called rural connectivity, which is connecting the rural community with the urban development. So today we use something called optical fiber cables. Now these are a path-breaking development when it comes to internet connectivity or communication, because instead of copper cables we now use optic fiber cables, and these cables allow large quantities of data to be transmitted rapidly, securely, and are virtually error-free. So if you remember back in the day, if somebody had a cable connection with a strong magnetic private antenna, you could attract the transmission that is going through those cable wires. And if you see today, with the help of optical fiber cables, these kind of transmission losses are not there. Data is absolutely secured and there is no transmission loss. So this is the kind of development that has come in the communication industry. Now let's talk about satellite communication. Now we all know the importance of internet. It is connecting almost everyone and all the countries in the world. So remember this point, satellite communication was only possible if and only if there was a space research. So a lot of time there's an argument, why does a country spend so much behind space exploration? Well, you have a reason in front of you. It is due to the 1970s space research conducted by USA and Russia. Today we understand the opportunity that lies in front of us, because with the help of artificial satellites we have launched so many satellites in the space that is helping us in our day-to-day communication. So these satellites, which are deployed in the Earth's orbit, they help us in connecting people and places in the remote corners of the globe. Or in other words, we can go on to say that today's communication has actually reduced the distance as well as time. So if we were to talk about the India's development in terms of satellite development, then we can name some, which is Aryabhatta, that was launched in 19 April 1979. Then we have Bhaskar 1 in 1979, and then we have Rohini in 1980, and then on 18 June 1981 we launched Apple, that is Ariane Passenger Payload Experiment. And then because of INSAT 1B have made long distance communication possible. So these are some examples of the satellites that were launched by India. Now the last topic of this chapter is cyberspace, that is the internet. Now when we say cyberspace, it is not a real space. It's a virtual space which is created by computerized electronic devices. So the other word given to this is the internet. Now the importance of cyberspace is unimaginable. If I were to give you an example, think of it this way, you're watching this video on YouTube. Had there been no YouTube, I wouldn't be able to put this video up, or people like you wouldn't be able to locate it. Hence, YouTube can be referred to as a cyberspace, meaning a virtual space where you can see all these videos. Now, if one has access to this cyberspace, which is YouTube, on their phone, mobile devices, tablet or computer, then they can watch this video anywhere. So this is what is the meaning of cyberspace. And now if we were to look at some data, in 1995 there were less than 50 million internet users, but then in 2000 it rose to 400 million, and then after 5 years, that is in 2005, it grew to 1 billion. So you see how much this electronic network has taken a leap. Since you see the creation of all these electronic network has been primarily a job of the United States of America, but today we actually see a shift from these developed nations towards developing countries. Other countries like UK, Germany, Japan, China and India, they're also contributing towards this cyberspace. And not to forget, we are not just talking about the usability of cyberspace. Today, cyberspace is also helpful and becoming a great contribution towards economic and social factors, such as with the help of email, e-commerce, e-learning and e-governance, internet is contributing hugely towards nation's development. A lot of the businesses are done today over the internet. All the e-commerce websites like Amazon, Snapdeal, they are a living example of that. And today through e-learning, people are grasping knowledge at a faster rate. Today, due to all the courses that are being conducted online by major universities, it is very easy to access knowledge. And then we have e-governance. So there was a time when people had to actually stand in a long line in front of a government office to get a job done. I wouldn't say that it has gone completely, but there is a lot relief today. With the help of e-governance, today most of the job is being done online. Right from filling the application to getting an acknowledgement or receipt of payment, everything is being covered under the e-governance concept. And this line over here nicely sums up the entire chapter. It is the modern communication systems, more than transportation, that has made the concept of the global village a reality. Transportation is important, but it is due to communication. The entire world today has the opportunity to be one giant global village. With this, we have come to an end of this long chapter. I hope you found this video informative. Don't forget to check out the question and answer on the website. I'll mention the link in the description as well as in the info card right up there. If you enjoyed these videos and see a purpose behind watching them, please like the video and comment down below. Until then, catch you guys later and talk to you guys on the next one. Peace.